How's it going, everybody? Matt Borey here from the American Casino Guidebook and the Jackpot Gents with a very special guest today, Josh O'Connell from fliptheswitch.com, which is also part of the Brian Christopher Slots Empire. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing well. It's so great to be back with you.
Always great to talk to you. Josh is very, very knowledgeable about slots. Probably, I think, the most knowledgeable person I know about slot machines. So we like to bring him in from time to time, anytime we want to do an educational video about slots. Our topic today is 5 things to never do while playing slots. And before we start, Josh was nice enough to make a URL right on their website for all to cover all this stuff we're going over today.
Absolutely. If you visit fliptheswitch.com/slot tips, all one word, you'll find a number of articles related to this topic and others, just overall slot tips, do's and don'ts that we've written about since we've launched the site. I think they take up a big part of the casino floor. They make a lot of money for the casino. They do quite a bit of work, right? So the last thing we want to do as players is put ourselves in a position where we're doing things that just make it easier for them to take our money, right? I think we can be smart about that a little bit. And not that slots have a strategy per se in the most part, but like you can still be savvy with your bankroll and being careful and, as I've advocated here in the past. So that's sort of the goal for today's chat.
All right, well, let's hop right into it, shall we?
Yeah, and the first one's one that I think all of us have talked about here many times by now, but that's to play slots without a player's card. So the player's card is a way that the casinos track your play. That's their purpose. They want to know what type of player you are, but they also reward you for that, and they basically pay you for that information in the form of your casino comps and your offers. So when you play without a player's card, you are basically giving up the opportunity to get those offers. And we know that there are some players who are superstitious about this, like the casinos are somehow using that information to change payouts. We recently asked IGT that question. So we wanted to actually find out, is it even possible for the player's card to be used in a way that can manipulate the slot machine's payouts? They said specifically that doesn't exist. So for all those players who are superstitious out there and are fearful that using a player's card is costing them money because they're lowering the payouts, it's simply not the case. What you are getting, though, is somewhere between 20 and 40% of your expected losses back in the form of those upfront casino dollars that you earn as you play, as well as the offers they mail you to return. So it's definitely one of those things you don't want to leave on the table because it can be quite valuable. It can be free play, food, rooms,
Hmm.
shopping, all sorts of gifts, all sorts of different things that are
Concert
available.
tickets, which we
Yeah,
get a lot
exactly.
down here since we're right next to the Hard Rock.
Yeah, hard to give up concerts at the Hard Rock for sure.
Yes. Yeah, but one caveat I wanted to put in there is there is probably one time where you do want to not play with your Players Club card.
Right.
And that is if you're making a very short trip to the casino, like to pick up one of these gifts that Josh was just talking about, or if you're just going in and out for dinner or something. If you're planning on being there for a shorter period of time than you would normally be there playing, what the casinos do is they base your rewards based on your average daily play. So if you go 3 times a month for, a certain period of time, and then you go once, you play for 30 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever it is, then instead of dividing by three, they're, dividing by four for the month, and it's going to lower the way that they calculate your reward. So
Exactly. Actually,
almost always.
let's take that one step further, in fact, because we actually gave that advice recently on Flip the Switch and got a lot of people saying exactly what you did. Well, they'd average it out. There is a hook in many of these casinos systems for what they call a no play day. You show up, you take the offer, and you leave. The casino extends those offers because they want to have you come back and play again. They do sometimes put in a special rule that if someone is abusing the offers and not playing, they'll just cut off the offers, which in the fine print, they have a right to do. So there are certain companies that are more aggressive with it. I've definitely seen it with Caesars properties in the past, where even if you play under your average, they'll sometimes cut off your offers, make you go to the desk. Oh, we need to tell you that, like, keep doing this. We're going to take them away forever. Okay, we'll give them back this time. So it's something to be aware of, right? The average is definitely part of it, but no or low play days can also factor in as its own red flag to casinos that maybe
Mhm.
you're not playing at the level that they expect, and so the offers may be changed pretty quickly after that.
Yep. All right, so what's number two on the list, Josh?
Number two is that a mistake that people make with slots is that they presume they have to max bet, and there's definitely a historical reason for that. A lot of games had, if you think back to the old mechanical reels days, they'd have like on one credit, you'll get access to these pays, and on two credits, you'll get access to these better pays, and the best pays are on three credits, right? So there was sort of a design with the pay table that encouraged you to max bet. And that certainly still exists on certain slot machines, but it's not always the case anymore. And I'll give a couple of examples of games that people always presume they had to max bet on. That's not always the case. Megabucks. Megabucks for the longest time was you always have to max bet to qualify, and the max bet was $3. That was sort of the structure. But there are newer Megabucks machines that can go above $3, $5, $10 max bets. You still qualify for Megabucks at that $3 bet, but if you bet higher, you just qualify at a slightly better rate, right? Your odds improve based on what you're betting relative to that $3. So you don't necessarily have to max bet on the newer ones. Another example is quick hit. So for the longest time, they had progressives on them, and you had to max bet to be eligible for those progressives. Some of the newest ones, like Quick Hit Link, do not have the same progressive structure, and so you are eligible for the progressives at any bet, and the Quick Hit pays sort of mostly adjust proportionally to your bet. So now you do not have to max bet to qualify for those either. So there's definitely been shifts, and a lot of this has to do with multi-denomination slot machines. What used to work as a structure where max betting with a single denomination falls apart when you have a bet range between 50 cents and $50. So
Yeah.
basically, they've changed their mindset about how a machine works, and that means that for most cases, you do not have to max bet on a slot to qualify for all pays. What you do need to care about is something called cost to cover. What that means is you are betting enough to qualify for any bets that a machine has. So for instance, if you're playing those like Wonka, Wizard of Oz, they'll usually have a giant progressive at the top, and you got to bet a few dollars to be eligible for that, but you don't have to max bet. So making sure you're just qualifying for all of the payouts that the machine has to offer is more important than a max bet nowadays.
Yeah, and you're talking about those like what do they call them? Life-changing jackpots where it's like millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, usually if there's six or seven figures in there, that's going to be a great example. There are some exceptions like the $1 million Dragon Links. Those are self-contained,
Hmm.
and you do qualify on any bet for those. Of course, the bets are much higher to start because they're in a high limit room, but you don't have to max bet on those either. So yeah, you'll usually tell you on the bet panel nowadays what you have to bet to qualify for everything, or it'll definitely tell you in the rule table.
Hmm. Well, one question I have for you is I've seen something. I don't play slot machines that much. I'm mostly a video poker player, as you know. But I've seen some where, like now, they'll say your increased chances on your the max bet or something. So
Yep.
if it says that, what do you think? How do you think players should treat that?
So that messaging is effectively sort of bet more to win more, right? Like a lot of times. So think about like a top progressive, like a grand jackpot on a lightning link. I
Hmm.
think it's reasonable for everybody to assume if you're betting 50 cents a spin, your chances of winning that $10,000 plus progressive is going to be lower than if you're betting $5 a spin or
Hmm.
$10 a spin, right? And so what they're basically telling you is your chances improve because you're betting more, but your chances improve proportionally, right? So like $5 bet will have about a 10 times as well chance of hitting that, right? So it's going to be proportional. So in the long run, like what you win versus what you bet is going to pretty much cancel out. Where you want to actually pay attention is like, bet at least this much to qualify for, you know, the top progressive, or bet at least this much to qualify for a better payout. Like there's a game called Quick Spin where they actually tell you your wheel odds improve on higher bets. And that means actually the payback is improving as you bet higher. So there are definitely some examples out there, but it's the minority of slots, not the majority.
Yeah, I seem to remember there's another one that works like Lightning Link or something like that, where it's the six symbol hold and spin, but if you bet a certain amount, it drops it to five symbols in order to trigger it or something like that. Or can't remember if that's increase in bet or increase in the
That's
denomination.
denomination. I think you're talking about Mighty Cash. So Mighty
Ah,
Cash
yes. Yeah,
versions
that's the
have
one.
the
Oh.
ability. But what you also have to remember is that when you change denominations, you're effectively changing the game, right? It
Hmm.
looks the same, the reels look the same, but they are different because they're structured for a different number of lines, usually
Hmm.
things like that. So there are other tweaks going on. So yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean it's better odds either. It just means, it's a different setup.
Gotcha. All right, now on to number three now, Josh.
So our third one relates to what your goal is for playing slots. And so what we see a lot is people saying, I really want to get a jackpot hand pay. And so we do not recommend that as a goal for slots because it's an arbitrary number. And it's been the same now since the 70s, and we get a lot of questions about when is it going to change. We don't know. There's been proposals and they seem to go nowhere. But today, a hand pay jackpot is $1,200 regardless of bet. So all you have to do is win $1,200. You could have bet $5,000 on a slot machine or electronic machines, I should note. But as long as you win $1,200, that's going to trigger a jackpot hand pay. So you can see how that could be a problem if you're betting 50 cents a spin versus betting $100 a spin, right? It's a very
Oh
different
yeah.
the multiple of your bet to get that. What we
Mhm.
usually recommend instead is to set goals that are achievable. So like if you're going to sit down and put $20 in a slot, maybe you play till you get a bonus or you run out of money. Maybe you try to double your money as long as it's a reasonable double, right? Putting 500 in, trying to double it at 50 cents a spin is a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But playing for a jackpot, it sounds exciting. I've certainly had my share of them on lower bets, and that's really cool. But playing for that as a goal is very difficult because it can be out of reach for many players. Instead, maybe it's 50 times your bet is a great target or something like that. And that's certainly achievable on many slots. So I think, just setting the right expectations for yourself so you don't go in looking for entertainment and just leave disappointed because you set a very difficult goal for yourself.
Yeah, that's one thing, that is that we've said from time to time is you got to look at the casino as an entertainment factor. So you got to go in with the proper mindset. If you, like you said, if you're trying to, your goal is to catch lightning in a bottle, getting a hand pay on a 50-cent bet, you're 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to, well, 99 times out of 100, you're probably going to be disappointed trying to get a hand pay on a 50-cent bet.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm. All right, next one I feel is very, very important. This is one that my dad and I stress all the time on all games in casinos.
Absolutely. And it kind of ties into the last one in a way too, and that's to not overbet your bankroll by by choosing a bet that's high relative to what you have in hand. So I hear like people's like, let's take $100 and run into the high limit room. And $10 spins means you could have 10 tries to make something happen. And on a slot, that 10 tries can easily be 10 losing spins or barely your money backs or anything like that and not really last very long.
Oh yeah.
So if you're going into the casino and your goal is to spend a couple of hours there and you have $100, you shouldn't be doing $5 spins, right? You should be
Yeah.
doing something that's going to give you enough chances to get some bonuses and get some big wins that keep you in the hunt. And um, that can be a few hundred times your bet if you're trying to get 3 or 4 hours out of it, right? Like, you can
Mhm.
do 500 spins an hour in a slot without even blinking, especially on the modern slots today. So, you know, evaluating that is a really helpful thing. The goal may not be to necessarily leave a winner, but it might be like to not spend all your money. Maybe you want to
Yeah.
have a chance of walking out with something, and that's still a victory, right? Because at the end of the day, if you walk into a casino with money, you should have your plan be that the most likely possibility is you're going to leave with nothing. So leaving with something is still beneficial. So that's why we recommend not to overbet your bankroll because you could just be setting yourself up for a complete loss too quickly without having a chance to sort of see anything happen.
Yeah, exactly. The way my dad has always said it is, it's like people go to the casino for entertainment. It's like the same thing. If you go to a football game, you got to spend like $100 a piece minimum on the football tickets. You got to pay for the beers or the drinks. You got to pay for the food when you're in the stadium. And
Mhm.
that's what a football game lasts, what, 3, 4 hours tops. So if you get 3, 4 hours of entertainment for hell, at that point, you're probably at $500. And all you're getting is the experience out of it. If you go to the casino with that same $400 or $500, whatever it would take you to cost you to go to the football game, you go there on a 50-cent bet, like you're saying, that could last even longer than 3 or 4 hours, and you have a chance of leaving with at least something back.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't go in with the expectation you're going to leave with something, but it's a nice opportunity that just happens to exist with this form of entertainment.
Mhm. All right, now the last one, number 5, is we're going to sort of flip the coin on what number 4 just was.
Exactly. And so what a lot of people are a little bit cautious about is when they look at denominations on slot machines and sometimes overcorrecting too low. So what we know is that slot paybacks aren't publicly advertised, but what we also know is that to some degree there's reporting that's behind them. And so when you look at that reporting, and it's pretty steady most of the time when you look across the country, is that as you go up in denomination, the average payback percentage goes up a little bit as well. And it's, sometimes small slivers, but those small slivers will add up because over the long run, you will see a better return on those bets than on lower denomination. And this is also important because many slot machines rather have multiple denominations nowadays. So you could sit down at a machine, for instance, we'll use Lightning Link as an example again. 1 cent denomination has a 50 cent minimum bet, but a 5 cent denomination only has a $1.25 minimum bet. So for many players who might be betting a dollar or $1.50 on that penny, it might be worthwhile to step up to that nickel denomination. And the reason is, although you don't know what the casino is setting under the hood, you do know that they can set the payback by denomination. And many times, not always, but sometimes, that higher denomination will pay back a little bit more.
Mhm.
So it's helpful to play a higher denomination if your budget allows for it, because the expectation is at least a percentage of the time those slots will be paying a little bit more. And over time, that can mean either you spend less money or you go home with a little more in your pocket, or maybe you have a winning session where you would have had a losing one because you just happen to have a little bit better run that time.
Mhm. Okay, so that does it for our five things to never do when playing slots. I had a sixth one I wanted to throw in, which we're throwing it in at the end as a little bonus here. But it's sort of a double-edged sword here, but that's why we were throwing it in as a bonus. And that was to you don't want to stop the reels using the spin button. And the reasons I had behind that was because A, it spins up your losses. A slot machine is a negative expectation game. You should expect to lose money in the long run. And the
Yep.
more spins that you do in a set period of time, the more money you are likely to lose in that said period of time. And the other reason is that it does not actually change the results. And that's what a lot of people don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. I think starting from that point, if you're doing it to try to control the slot, that's definitely a don't, because you're not. Your outcome is decided the moment you make that wager by pressing spin to start the reels. So at that point, it's already out of your hands. But one thing that I will say is that, some people want to play for a bonus. And so if they were going to spend 250 a spin spinning slowly, maybe they're okay spending 50 cents or a dollar spinning quicker, which can take the edge off of that overall losses question, right? Because you're going to have more outcomes, but at a lower bet instead. So maybe you'll still spend 250 in that same window of time, but you're just doing it in a different fashion. So I think that you can, if you're course correcting for that a little bit, that makes it a little bit less of a problem in my mind. And the other thing too is, like, now, of course, there's buy bonuses on some slots, but definitely not many slots. And so if you really are trying to chase that bonus, maybe you're willing to lower your bet and spin faster, because with more overall outcomes, you should see more of everything, right? More losing spins, but also more winning spins, also more bonuses, just because quantitatively you've
Mhm.
completed more spins, right?
Mhm.
So I think, depending on what you're trying to do, what excites you when you go to the casino, I could see where fast spinning can make sense if you're doing it in a way that doesn't put yourself too far out there and burn through your cash too fast.
Yeah. And then one last thing I wanted to put out there was you've made a page on fliptheswitch.com speaking about this topic, right?
Yeah, so we obviously share a lot of tips about slot machines, throughout the site. And so to make it a little bit easier to find some of these topics and sort of the do's and don'ts and sort of recommendations we make, if you go to fliptheswitch.com/slot tips, all one word, you'll find a set of selected articles we have about this topic, including some of the ones we talked about today.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Josh. Always a pleasure to talk to you. People want to learn more about you and your work. Where can they do that?
Come check out fliptheswitch.com, where we post content every single day. We're over 1,000 articles and counting at this point, which is, I feel like deja vu saying that because I used to say that a couple of years ago, but we really are. And the thing that I'm really most excited about in 2025 is we're adding some new contributor voices, other experts in the industry. So stay tuned for even more great content across the board as we continue to do that throughout the year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you.